Well, hi, welcome back to the channel. You know, we're asked a lot about living in Florida, in Southwest Florida in particular, and what about the issue of storms, the issue of hurricanes? And so we thought we would sit down today and chat about that a little bit because we spend a decent part of every year in what's technically hurricane season.
Hurricane season, that's one of our big seasons down here. Absolutely.
Well, I'm Terry Pasquarelli with MVP Realty.
I'm Rich Pasquarelli with MVP Realty.
And so today we'll tackle living in Florida during hurricane season. What do you need to know?
Right.
And as we talk about that, we're going to talk about this from our perspective, things we've experienced and learned by living in Southwest Florida for a long time. I'd have to say by no means are we the hurricane experts.
Absolutely not.
And so what's the best thing we can do, I think, to help people in terms of getting really accurate and expert level recommendations?
We're going to put in a bunch of links at the bottom that will take you to all of the official sites. They'll tell you where the hurricane zones are and where the shelters are, evacuation routes, all the extensive preparations that you should be taking. So we're just going to brush over some of that stuff and tell you about things that you really need to be thinking about if you live or are thinking about living in Southwest Florida.
All right, well, let's get to it. Well, the first thing, I guess, is what is and when is hurricane season? And maybe people know this, but we should know that hurricane season technically starts on June 1st of every year and runs through November 30th. Right. However, for the last, I think, at least 6 years, there are tropical depressions or tropical storms that seem to be forming earlier and earlier. And the warnings and the guidances are starting to come out from the National Weather Service earlier than June 1st.
Well, here we are, we're already into June, and we've already had the first named storm of the season. That was back in May. So,
right. So I think what I've heard is that the National Hurricane Service and the weather authorities are going to use May 15th unofficially right now as when they start giving guidance, because things have happened earlier, like I said, maybe the last 6 years at least.
The last few years anyways.
And then they'll consider whether or not there's someday an official change to hurricane season.
Right.
The definition hasn't changed, but the practicality is we've got a little front end stretch to the season.
Absolutely.
So that's important to know. And then the next thing about hurricanes is that they're not a one-size-fits-all.
Yeah, well, what is a hurricane? Well, first of all, you have the tropical storm, and I believe that wind on the tropical storm is going to start around 39 miles an hour.
Is that sustained?
And that's a sustained winds. And then after that, you're going to get into the hurricane winds. A Cat 1 will start at 75 miles an hour, and you'll have Cat 2, Cat 3, Cat 4, and Cat 5, which we hope we never ever see. That starts at over 157 miles an hour is where that one starts at.
Yikes. Yeah. And you know, as you talked about, even a Cat 1 storm at 74 to say 95 miles an hour, what people have to also think about when they're making decisions that we'll talk about later about do I stay or do I evacuate?
Right.
If you are staying and the sustained winds get to a certain level, our emergency responders in South Florida are not allowed or able to be dispatched.
Right.
They have to really stay in the operations centers and where they are until sustained winds come down to a safe enough level for them to come out and look for you or to try to help
Absolutely.
you. And so you may have to stay where you are if the sustained winds start getting high.
So if you have a medical emergency or if you have any type of an emergency, if the winds are too high, they cannot come out. They have to stay inside. Otherwise, they're going to be put in danger just as much as everybody else is. And out on a street during hurricane winds is not where you really want to be.
No, that makes sense. You know, we talk about hurricanes, and over time there have been quite a few of them. I went back to look at the statistics, and it's 341 major hurricanes have come in the Atlantic or up through the Gulf, and of that, 38 major storms have made their way to Florida.
Right.
But that's over 170 years, so like a long time, and quite a while since they've been keeping track of that. Maybe more recent that they've gotten fancy names, but
Right.
38 storms that really have had that level of really high significance. And it doesn't mean, though, that you don't get a lot of drenching rain and a lot of weather that changes your life and lifestyle for a few days, even if it's just a tropical depression or a Category 1.
And that's a good thing to note, too. It doesn't have to be a hurricane to cause all kinds of damage and problems. Yeah, if you get a slow-moving tropical storm, that's going to dump a lot of rain. You could get a lot of flooding. It doesn't have to be a hurricane for you to have flooding and wind damage with power outages. But as you get into the hurricanes, then things start getting more and more likely that there's going to be power outages and flooding.
Well, maybe you can talk a little bit about some of the storms that have come through that really are in that 38 that people kind of remember and historically keep track of.
Well, only 3 of those hurricanes were a Cat 5 that hit Florida. There's been Cat 5s that are out in the ocean, and maybe they were a Cat 5, and then by the time they got to land, they reduced their strength, either going through mountainous islands to our south or whatever reason. But only 3, and only 2 of those in the last 29 years. And one of them was Andrew, that everybody should remember, back in '92, and the other one after that was Michael.
So those were really, really significant from a wind perspective. Not that some of the others didn't do a lot of damage
right.
and kind of create a lot of havoc. But I think that when you think about those big storms, while we say hurricane season starts in June, that's not usually when we see the likes of an Andrew or a Michael, is it?
And all of those 38 storms that did hit, all but one happened during the peak season, which is August through October. Only one of them happened outside of that. So as we start getting later into the hurricane season, and you start getting into September, October, those are really the peak season of the hurricane season.
Makes sense. Now, in recent memory, I think the one we all think about now is Irma.
Irma, that came through right over our house back in 17, and this was our first season in this house, and Irma was supposed to go north and hit the east coast of Florida.
Oh, okay.
But instead, it didn't start to turn north until it came much farther west, and it ended up coming up and hitting Marco and in South Florida as a Cat 3 hurricane.
Makes sense, and that was a big one. But maybe not the biggest. As you said, a lot of people remember Andrew.
Absolutely. And Andrew, actually, what Andrew did is it really made everybody sit up and take notice and look at our building codes. Before Andrew, there were some building codes, but they weren't being enforced very well. They didn't understand them very well. And once Andrew hit, the state pretty much said, okay, we've got to review this. We've got to understand how we're building homes and how we could better build homes to withstand these forces, these hurricane force winds.
And thankfully, with newer materials by the 90s and now since, the ability to upgrade code and adhere to them has really presented a good opportunity, because homes are made more and more sturdy all the time compared to things that were made 50, 70, 100 years ago.
Most of our homes are all concrete block with reinforced rebar and all of this today, where they didn't do that back then. And with codes, what they do is they review them about every 3 years, and as a matter of fact, it was reviewed and new code levels came into effect starting just this past January.
Well, that's helpful to know, right? That we're now in a sequence where we're not waiting for the devastation of an Andrew for things to be reviewed. They're being done proactively. So that's happening at a big picture level. I think the same premise holds for people individually. Don't wait until a hurricane comes to learn about hurricanes. There's an opportunity to be prepared, because when storms come, the things that they can trigger are kind of several, and damage can come in different ways. And then we can talk a little bit about how preparations help you balance some of that off. But it's not just sort of rain coming from the sky. There are a variety of things that are the triggers for damage.
Oh, absolutely. And everybody has heard the saying that hide from the wind and run from the water, because water's coming in. you can't do anything. You've got to be
Already out of harm's way. You can't run from it at the wrong time.
You can't run from it because the water is up, and you can't drive out, you can't walk out, and I certainly wouldn't be wanting to walk through flooded streets. You don't know what's in there. You should never, ever do that.
Or drive through them either.
Or drive through.
You just can't drive your way out of those big, deep
Right.
areas of water. So when you think about it, there is, the rain's coming down and kind of putting water in a place where there's flooding issues. But then we also have the impact of a storm. We talked about sustained winds. So where are you looking?
I heard wind.
Thanks. Right on cue.
Yeah.
So there's water
Right.
that's coming from the rains that are coming down in the hurricane and creating flooding in many cases
Right.
because it's oversaturating the area and can't drain off fast enough. But there's also the damage from wind, tornadoes that spin up, and also storm surge. And I
Right.
think sometimes that's a term that's a little bit like, well, what the heck is storm surge?
Yeah, a lot of times they'll be telling us that they're expecting a storm surge of 3 feet, 5 feet, even more feet. And what that is, that's where the wind from the hurricane is pushing water from the ocean or the Gulf onto the land, and that wind is pushing that water in at a higher level than what would a normal tide be. So if you're going to be a 3 feet storm surge, that's going to be 3 feet over tide level. So you're going to have to consider where you are and what your elevation is, and when it's time for you to evacuate.
Makes sense. That makes sense. And you're kind of leading into, well, there are preparations that people can do actually well in advance, and then there are preparations that can be in need to be done as a storm is definitely approaching. So
Right.
let's start at the beginning in terms of things people can do well in advance that will help position them to make a decision about their plan and just to have a lot of groundwork done. One of those would be, does everybody have a home inventory? And not everybody's walking around kind of recording room by
Writing
room.
everything down, how many
But-
spoons and forks and TVs and all
But
of this.
if there
that you
was
have.
damage, how can somebody think about recreating and keeping track of what
Right.
they've got?
It's very difficult for you to be sitting in a hotel room trying to remember everything you own. So one of the ways to do this is to go around and take pictures, or videos is even better. Take videos of your home, inside, outside, all of your cars, your boat, your RV, all of this stuff. Take a video of it, and don't forget to bring the video with you.
Well, that's a really good point. Have it off-site in a safe place, or take it with
Absolutely.
you when you go.
Right.
And part of that is this concept of protecting your home.
Right.
So that's knowing what your home and your property consists of. Protecting your home, there are also some steps that people take, even as they talk to us about whether they're going to buy or build a certain home, or things they can do once they're in a home to sort of shore things up in terms of the structural protection. One of the very first things, if you have the choice, is to put in impact-resistant doors and windows.
Absolutely.
And that relates, I think, to the code conversation that you had a few minutes ago.
Right. You need to put something over the windows of your house. Now, if you have impact-resistant glass when you're building your house, that's probably the best way to go, especially if you're not here full time, and if you're gone back up north for the hurricane season, you don't have a way to get back down here and cover over those windows with panels. So you're probably going to have to hire somebody to put them on and off. And if you have, and then of course then everybody knows you're not there. But if you have impact resistant, you don't have to be putting those things up.
But not every home has impact-resistant doors and windows, and so there are some very good storm-related options that you need to make plans for in advance, even if you put them up in the days or hours ahead of a storm. You alluded to them. Storm shutters or accordion-type things could be manual or
Right.
electric, remote,
Yep.
which can work some
You're
of the
gonna-
time if they're down.
Well, if you have, you're going to have some sort of protection over your windows, whether it's going to be a metal protection, whether it's going to be some kind of a fabric protection, whether the window is impact resistant, or even there's a heavy film that could be put on there. That's not as good as an impact resistant or a shutter, but at least it's something rather than not having anything at all. And once you have your windows and things done, then you can start thinking about doing other forms of protection, like on your lanai. What we have is a big screen that comes down. It's electric, but if the power is out, It also has a manual override where you can just crank it up and down. And we take all of our lanai furniture, everything that's outside, we bring it in underneath our covered area, and then we close that screen, and then all of the stuff that's outside has been put away.
Which makes sense, because one of the things when we talk about wind being an issue is that unsecured items become projectiles during the course of a storm, and you don't want your potted plants, your garbage cans, your outdoor furniture, pool equipment that's unsecured to really go flying around damaging your home or somebody else's.
Absolutely. And don't think that your big green egg is not going to get moved away by the wind. I've seen pictures of in-ground swimming pools that have been moved. So if they can be moved, your big green egg can be moved as well. We even have our air conditioning units and pool equipment that is actually bolted to the ground. That's part of a code that even those big heavy things can get moved with water and wind in the storm.
Makes sense. And there are some things you can't take into your garage or take easily into your lanai behind a screen or into your home, and then it's important to tie things down. And one thing that comes to my mind is sometimes people don't think about, we have these beautiful lights that may hang at our front entry over the front door, and they're on some kind of a chain or something.
Right.
Well, what happens to that thing? Becomes like
absolutely. You're not likely to.
What a mess.
You're not likely to go up there and take that light down, but you can tie it from one side to the other so that it's not swinging back and forth. It's going to get damaged if it does that, and it could damage something else or someone else.
Right. So I think those are the kinds of things that, in addition to planning ahead, whether you have hurricane impact, windows and doors, or the mechanical devices to cover windows and doors, be they fabric or metal, what have you, then you get into what you do as a storm approaches, put everything away, tie everything down, and then you've got to think about, well, am I going to stay or am I going to go?
Right.
What do you do for yourself? And it may depend on where you live relative to the coastline, because there are different zones and categories of where you're likely to be most at risk. And of course, close to the water and the coastline is most at risk. And there's a whole series of A, B, C, D.
Right,
E.
there's different zones. And most of Zone A, which is the most likely to have any flooding issues, that's going to be up against the coast, and it's going to be west of 41 Tamiami Trail. And then as you drive east, the zones are going to go B, C, D, and E. And as you're less and less likely to be affected by storm surge.
Right. So I think Category A is always the one that's going to listen first for the call to evacuate.
And they may ask you to evacuate even before the storm comes. They have an idea of, hopefully they have an idea of where the storm is going to go. And once you're in that, the cone of hysteria, as I like to call it.
There is a storm coming!
Once you're in that cone, then they may, the county officials may ask you to evacuate, or at some point in time they may have a mandatory evacuation of those areas. Again, because they're not going to be able to get in there to help you. So they're going to have to make sure that you're
a decision in advance.
Right.
In addition to those coastal areas, I believe Category A would also include people who live in mobile or manufactured homes. And so that's another consideration if anybody is staying in one or owns one, about what the evacuation hierarchy is.
Absolutely.
And it varies with every storm depending on whether it's coming at you directly off the Gulf or coming across land. So every situation varies, and you do have to be ready and prepared and have thought in advance. If you do decide to evacuate, what routes are you going to go?
Right.
Are you going to go east? Maybe you're going to go north.
Right. You're going to have to understand where the storm is likely to go, and also you have to understand that other people are going to do the same thing. If you don't leave soon enough, you're likely to get stuck in traffic. It's not the right place to be. So the best thing to do, especially if you're in Zone A, is to consider leaving before the storm even starts.
Before it gets too close.
Right.
Now, there are also opportunities in many storms to go to county or other locally run shelters.
Exactly.
But even there, it's important to have a plan, because not all shelters accommodate all needs.
Right, and not all shelters are open all the time. So when a storm starts, they'll open up a shelter, and then maybe they'll open up another shelter. But you also have to understand, not all shelters can accommodate people with pets. Many shelters do not allow pets. Some shelters specifically for people that are in some kind of a health need. And you need to understand which shelter is the right one for you, whether you have pets, whether you have health concerns. You need to know where they are. You need to register with them before the storm there's even a storm even named. You make sure you understand that long before. And if you're going to bring a pet, make sure that you also there's stipulations about the pet needs to be in a pen. So make sure that you have that ready to go.
Makes sense, and probably documentation that your pet has been correctly vaccinated and is up to date on shots or any health-related things that could get asked for, as well as, of course, you bring not only supplies for yourself, we'll talk about that later, but supplies for your pet.
Absolutely.
They've got to be ready as well.
Right.
So if you go to a shelter, you have to remember that shelter is the key word. They are going to provide a roof over your head, a secure building, and maybe a cot or blankets. Everything else,
if you're lucky, everything else is on you. So you have to bring all of your own, your food and water and supplies, your medical supplies, any sanitary supplies that you're going to need. You're going to bring that because they're not going to have that there for you.
Makes sense. And as you alluded to earlier, among the things you bring are not only your provisions you're going to use, but that video perhaps, or the thumb drive with the photos of your home inventory. And also, it's a good idea to have a thumb drive or some portable way of carrying with you copies of your important papers, documents that you wouldn't want to be without. Even if you don't need them technically in the shelter, you don't know when you'll get back to your home, or if anything gets water damaged or destroyed in some way, you want access to your passport and other key documents,
papers,
insurance,
your any
your
documents,
doctors and health paperwork and things like that you would want to be able to reconstruct quickly and readily. Have it portable and take it with you.
Absolutely.
And have that as part of what's in your preparation bag to go. So I think the other thing is, remember to bring your phone charger. They're not going to have that for you
They're not
either.
going to have that, and you'd be lucky to be able to share electricity to keep it charged. But yeah, absolutely, any of that stuff. Games for the kids, a deck of cards, anything to help keep you occupied during the storm.
That makes a lot of sense. And I think that big theme is, don't wait till the last minute, whether you're driving far away, deciding to try to get to the other side of the state or even out of the state, or whether you're heading to a shelter. Have a plan and don't hesitate. If it's the right thing to do, or if you're even in doubt, go and check it out. Get into the shelter while there's still room for you or room for your pet, or get onto the highway while there's still gasoline stations open and while you can get out without the traffic being at a total, crawl.
Absolutely.
You'll feel less stress and you'll get to a safe place and in better order. Sometimes people have what they would call a bug out bag, right? To have it ready so that if that time comes, you don't have to say, well, now I need 2 hours to figure out what I'm taking with me.
Absolutely.
What's a bug out bag?
Well, bug out bag we have, and I can show you later on, but we have 2 backpacks that are filled with our supplies, change of clothes, toiletries, any medications that we may need, any phone numbers that we may want to have on hand, anything like that we want to just grab the bag and go. That we call it a bug out bag, and we didn't invent the name, but we have one for each of us, and we take that with us. We also have another backpack that has first aid supplies, because again, you may not be able to get an ambulance here, so to have some bandages or aspirin, which you might need, have that available to you, so it's you're not trying to do that the last minute.
That's a great point. Now, assuming then somebody took off to a shelter or to a safer area, coming back is the next decision, and maybe one point of suggestion would be not necessarily to try to rush and come back too soon.
Right.
Water may not have receded, roads may not be open, gas stations may not yet be open. There's a lot of uncertainty.
And you're going to probably be, in many cases, you're going to be without power for days. And that, are you willing to basically camp inside your house for a few days waiting for that power to come back on. You may consider waiting a little bit before you come back, because when you do come here, all of the resources that you're going to be looking for, everyone else is going to be. They're going to be in short supply. Water's going to be, food. You know, unless you have a generator, you're not going to have air conditioning or even a fan. It's going to get buggy after a storm. It's not the most comfortable environment that you really want to be in. So think about that, about rushing back to your house. If you have a generator, then it might be a little bit easier for you. But if you don't, but even if you do, you still need to get fuel for your generator, and that's going to be in short supply.
That makes sense too. Well, if people either are planning for what will be in place when they come back, or if they're in a position to stay because the storm hasn't risen to the level of need to evacuate, there's some additional preparations and things that people can have in their home and kind of keep an eye on, check the expirations or the age of things before the next hurricane season, just to make sure that their supplies are fresh and they're ready. So if you have power outage, kind of to the point you were just making, things like flashlights and radios, and that's not even the whole of it.
Battery operated radio, and those are the types of things that you're going to need having around. You're going to need food and water and medication for about 10 days for every person in the family. So we stock up usually over in the winter months, and we start putting our stash away, and then once hurricane season's over, we can donate a lot of that food
or
and not
eat
keep it, or eat it, and not keep it here, year after year. So we kind of rotate our food in and out, and we always want to make sure that we have enough on hand to take care of us for 10 days of no power.
Right, and so that even means the types of things that we have on hand are different than what we might cook and prepare on a normal schedule.
Right.
And actually, before we finish the video, we'll take a look at our food supply, because it's a time of year that we go back and check the levels of it and the dating on it. So we'll share it with everybody in the next part of this video. But for now, the other thing that, in addition to food, we talked about batteries, we talked about flashlights and a radio. How about things like lantern? You might need an LED type or a certain style of lantern.
Get LED lanterns, plenty of batteries.
How about cans even for water? Because you might have to store water to be able to use it.
Yep, we have water jugs, and I have gasoline cans that if I needed to evacuate, I can fill up some gasoline cans so that I can bypass that gas station and keep on to the next.
Right. Now, you're also one to be pretty handy, so, there's probably no discussion that can go without the use of duct tape. How about those kinds of supplies? What are some of the other things you would keep on hand, and why do you have them?
Well, when you're coming back, you don't know what you're going to be coming back to. So you're going to need some tools. You're going to need some, duct tape is always good. Plastic sheathing is a good thing to have all ready, and not try to buy it on your way back, because you're going to go into Lowe's and Home Depot and you're going to be looking for that stuff, and they're going to be wiped out. All of this stuff is going to be wiped out even before the storm. As soon as they name a storm, everybody runs to the grocery store and to the hardware stores, and they buy them out of everything. And if you haven't already done this, you ain't getting any.
You're not going to get it right away, that's for sure. The other thing is, we talk about powering up all of our technology that's all based on electricity. Phones charged, iPad charged, because you're not going to be able to recharge it for quite a while.
Right.
So solar batteries can be interesting as an option there.
Right.
But the other thing that makes me think about is you also can't run out to the ATM, which is all powered on electricity and so forth.
That's
when
right.
those things are down and the banks are closed, and you need to have some cash on hand, which so many of us don't use on a daily basis the way we used to.
The way we do, right.
But having cash available before you need it and when you need it may be the only way you can actually have a currency that's going to be accepted. So small bills.
Right. Small bills. You remember, first of all, the people that work at the bank, they're home with their families as well, so they're probably not going to be open. The ATMs, even if they had power, once they run out of cash, they're done. And when they do give cash, they always give it in $20 bills. When you go to a small store and you need to buy something, and all you have is a $20 bill, And in some cases, people have $50 bills. That's great for maybe a hotel, but for giving it to the small corner store to buy yourself some more batteries, you're going to pay $20 for, a set of batteries.
Because they can't make
Because
change.
they can't make change.
And you can't go to the ATM to get more money.
Right, exactly.
And your credit card's not going to run through a machine. All these things we take for granted are just going to be down.
Absolutely.
At least for a period of time.
And you'll be lucky even to have communication, because sometimes the cell tower near where you live may have had some damage, and you don't have cell service. So you can't call your family up north, and you can't let your kids know how everything is going. So make sure that they understand you may not be able to get in touch with them for a couple of days.
That's right. No, that makes sense. Well, I think we've talked about a lot. When we're inside, we're going to look at the food stash and kind of how we think about emergency supplies there. But once the dust settles, the power's back on, you're back home safely, and you're taking stock of what's going on, you may have some damage, even if it's not catastrophic.
Right.
And you still have to watch out, because sometimes people start turning up in neighborhoods to try to help.
Right.
And that can be, a little dicey as well.
You're always going to get people that are be right at your door, looking to fix your roof, looking to cut down that tree that was broken, and do any of these repairs that need to be done around your house. Be very careful with them, because you don't know who they are. Look out for people that are high pressure, only want to take cash. A lot of these people come in and they prey on people that are in need. So be very careful. It might be a good idea to identify some of those handymen and tree experts and roof experts before even hurricane season begins.
That makes sense. If you need to call someone reputable who's known in your town, and not necessarily think that the deal that someone knocking on your door is offering is really the best deal.
Absolutely.
It might be too good to be true.
And it usually will be. And also remember that all of these people, they are going to be so overwhelmed with everyone calling them. So patience after a storm is going to be something that you have no choice but to have.
That makes a lot of sense. It really does. So again, we're not experts. We've lived through some. We've known to evacuate, like we evacuated during Irma. It was time to get out. There's other storms that have not risen to that level of urgency, and we've been able to stay. We've been here during power outages. So all these things have happened, all permutations of it. But we will leave some links, as you said earlier. So look below in the description, because the links will help you to see where to go for shelter, what the pet shelters are, and what guidance is coming from the experts like the National Weather Service, the National Hurricane trackers, etc.
Right. County
government links are really important. Maybe have those weather apps on your phone. They're great for tracking weather, radar, and storms.
Absolutely.
And all those kinds of things you can take a look at in advance. And every year in the June time period, or heading into the summer, is a good time to back up and review with your family what is your plan, how are your supplies, what needs to be refreshed, and just kind of revisit it, because a lot of things improve, and you may be able to refine your plan and just be more ready to make this not a bad situation for your family, and feel safe, and hopefully we won't have too many named storms in any given year.
Really, and listen to the experts, because they've been through it before. They understand what you're going to be going through. They live here too. They also have to live through it, but they've been through it. So listen to those experts. They have all the information.
Makes sense. Well, while we're talking about preparing for hurricane season, we mentioned food, and food provisions are certainly something that's going to be different for everybody's taste, but I thought it might be helpful if we took a moment and just showed you what we have in our emergency pantry for supplies that we know will help tide us over during a power outage and stormy weather, especially if we're going to be preparing much simpler meals or forced to cook on our gas grill only outside. So come with us for a moment while we basically go through this kitchen lineup of supplies. We're taking stock for the season. We'll share with you what we've got. Well, here we are. We're going to take stock of our supplies, and I think we have a lot of stuff ready to go, and probably a few items we need to shore up on even as we prepare for the next hurricane season. First thing that we keep an eye on is protein. and looking at things that are in cans and easy to store. They don't require refrigeration or freezing. And you can see we've got that supply of canned hams. We've got a good supply of canned chicken, and it looks like we're down to the last 2 on tuna. So, hey, Rich, I think we need to put something on our list.
Absolutely.
And
don't forget, when you're buying the food, make sure you get stuff that everybody's going to like. If you have a picky eater, if they only want to eat tuna fish, make sure you have that, or chicken, or whatever it is. But make sure you buy things that you're going to want to eat.
That's a really great point. I always think of this stereotype of people running to the store to get bread. And if you're not going to have a sandwich for every meal, bread may not be what you want, but it could be soup. It could be, we've got dark beans, and we've got some cans of vegetables, because usually we're buying fresh produce, but at this point in time, we would need to be able to open a can of something that didn't require refrigeration, that we didn't worry about it spoiling. And then in addition to something like beans and vegetables with protein, we have supplies of rice, of quinoa, of gluten-free pasta in our case, but some pasta, and then some things to make a meal more rounded. Cans or jars of fruit like applesauce and oranges and fruit cocktail. We keep Kind bars, which are great for keeping your appetite at bay. They're healthy, they're tasty. And then you move to what I would say are the essentials.
Absolutely. You gotta have some fun food for a hurricane.
There are some long days and long nights, and you're amusing yourself. You're not running out to the movies or to some other venue. So it may be, if it's nuts that you like, salty treats, or if it's sweets, and then maybe that very important bottle of wine.
Bottle of wine. You have to have the bottle of wine with your Skittles.
There you go. So we make sure we have a bit of all of those things. And not to overlook the fact that once you have them, you have to be able to use them. I think one of the things you put out as a reminder, even for us, is that manual can opener.
Absolutely. Cannot open the tuna fish with your electric can opener.
No, and then how about that interesting camper coffee pot?
Absolutely. Remember those when you were kids. You're not going to have your electric coffee pot, and make sure if you grind your own beans, make sure that you have some coffee ready to go for that pot and the fresh water to put it in.
That's right, and even that fresh water could percolate some hot water, and I could throw in some tea bags on mine and make some tea. The other thing I put at the end of the counter, just as a reminder, is ahead of a storm, recharge everything that you want to have access to. If there is internet, or even if you just want to play games on your computer, make sure you've got things well charged and you are ready to go. The other thing that we'll show you briefly is our bug out bag. And if you take a look kind of down at floor level here, we've got 2 of our bags, one that has clothing in it, and the other red bag is a safety bag for first aid. And they're easy to grab, backpack style, toss in the back of the car, and head out if we need to evacuate. Well, that's our wrap up inside, and hope that's helpful to folks as they think about what you might want to have on hand for hurricane season: jars, cans, and easy to open food stores that do not perish. Of course, the first thing you're going to do is take the food out of your refrigerator and perhaps your freezer and use it before it spoils. But once that's gone after a couple of days, these kinds of provisions that we have out here on the counter are really important, and they are probably not going to be plentiful at the grocery store for another week or 2.
Absolutely, and I'm going to be putting in some pictures of our generator and how we have that ready to go for time of need.
All right, well, thanks for taking this tour of the kitchen. Well, we appreciate you sticking with the channel, watching us as we share these perspectives about living and moving to Southwest Florida. We're here to help you with your real estate needs, whether you're moving from one home to another here or coming to Florida for the first time. So don't hesitate to reach out. I'm Terry Pasquarelli, MVP Realty.
Rich Pasquarelli with MVP Realty.
You can reach us at 239-300-6047. We look forward to talking with you about your real estate needs and wish you a very safe and pleasant summer and fall season. By the end of November, hurricane season will be over.
That's right.
Let's talk soon.
Bye now.